Welcome to the Innovators. Each week, we're serving up real talk with badass women who are dishing out the truth. No fluff, no BS, just raw, honest stories and lessons to inspire and empower the next generation of trailblazing women. We're here to keep it real and pay it forward. I'm your humble host, Cynthia Nelson, three-time entrepreneur, Forbes contributor, investor, and advisor. Today, we're talking to Gwen Hammes, CEO of Cro Metrics. Gwen, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on, Cynthia.
So you have this crazy path. I'm gonna ask you to dive in, but your path to CEO has been anything but really typical. You've been in Argentina, Mexico City, US. You've had a really big and broad kind of global background. How has that shaped the way you lead today, especially in moments like now of total chaos and uncertainty?
Yeah, I think just I was lucky enough, right, throughout not only my life and my career to have those different experiences. And I'm a big believer in you grow the most when you're pushed out of your comfort zone. So, whether it was when I studied abroad my junior year of college in Argentina, and even though I had taken, 8 years of Spanish, it was like showing up and not knowing a word of Spanish and having to figure it out and having to not only figure out the city, but all of my classes were in Spanish, had to make friends and all of that kind of stuff, or to, working in a global clients for advertising agencies, where having to understand kind of the nuances of, all right, the differences between motivating a team in China versus a team in Brazil, and how do you get people kind of on board and heading in the same direction when a lot of those cultural norms are so different. And the way you have to relate with people and communicate with people is incredibly different. And so I've had a lot of stumbles along the way. It hasn't been easy, but I think that has been, the key thing is getting outside my comfort zone and then resilience within that of continuing to kind of persevere and get through and be focused and not give up because there's a lot of things that kind of come your way that are easy just to say, this isn't for me. I'm going to go in a different direction.
Oh, definitely. You talked about optimistic realism. I love this. So I want you to kind of tell me about how that shapes your leadership strategy and navigating, external shocks, economic downturns, like how you use that to not only help your teams, but your clients.
Yeah. And maybe I'll actually start with a little bit of background on that. So
Sure.
I've been, lucky enough, I think just the way I am, more of kind of like my nature is I'm a very positive person, right? Very glass half full, kind of, nothing really gets me down. But earlier in my career, I found that was actually an Achilles heel, where I was not being as honest or not as truthful as how the business was doing or how a client relationship was going. And I was like, oh, it's fine, it's fine. And it was not fine. And to that point, I was called out that, hey, we're having kind of toxic positivity here. And that was a big turning point for me to say, hey, it's good to be positive, but you got to bring that dose of realism. You have to be extremely transparent and candid, and you can, tell the truth in a very, black and white way. And then it's really bringing that positivity to the sense of, and here's what we're going to do going forward.
Right.
And so that's really over the last few years, I've honed in kind of bringing, I'd call it the realism
Right.
to my optimism. And that's always actually from a way of, recognizing what's happening around us. So whether it's, with our clients, a lot of our clients are still, I'd say kind of feeling the hangover of all of the tariffs. It's still
Yeah.
ongoing, but it's not as acute as earlier in the year.
Yeah.
And so saying, okay, well, we have this situation. It's completely, changing the playbook of your business. That's really hard. These are some of the challenges you're facing, but how do we use this as an opportunity to actually rewrite that playbook, to actually think outside of the box, to reconfigure what kind of a value proposition to consumers looks like as a result. Similarly, we have a number of nonprofit clients who
hmm
have been facing federal funding cuts, and that
Yeah.
is a huge, huge challenge. And so, sitting alongside of them and rewriting the nonprofit playbook in a way that says, okay, we have to imagine a reality where that federal funding never comes back. So, how does that business model, how does the fundraising model fundamentally change? And how do we use digital marketing to maybe connect with people we haven't connected with before, drive deeper connections, make it a meaningful, and again, driving value through that in new ways.
You started this company. Cro Metrics, and I want you to explain why it's so different from the traditional agency model because there's agencies and agencies and agencies, and everybody says they do it all, they do it all really well, and I think you realize that's not true, and you've moved away from that model. So how is Cro Metrics different? What do you do that's so unique?
Yeah, so I think it first and foremost just starts with, like the why we exist. And it's really about, the company was founded about 15 years ago by my co-CEO, Chris Newman. And, it was all on this thing of, hey, clients need to drive tangible growth. It's not enough just to do kind of the quote unquote marketing and put something out into the world and then kind of measure it and get a sense of like, okay, cross our fingers, did it work? Did it not work?
Right.
And so, he grew up at the time when the Amazons and the Googles and the Metas were really kind of taking shape.
Hmm.
And the role of experimentation and iteration to drive those business outcomes through putting real things into the world, multiple tests, seeing what works, and then doubling down on what does, and then moving away from what doesn't, was really kind of the core way. So we always call it like that became the how of the company of
Hmm.
leveraging experimentation. But as we grew and mature, and even in the past year that I've been with Cro Metrics, it's really been about elevating it to not only the what, but the why, to making sure that it first and foremost, it really is about being the tip of the spear, driving that tangible growth. A lot of what we do is focused on obviously kind of like that digital consumer journey,
Hmm.
but really kind of getting to when is there, a hotel booked? When is there a
Hmm.
donation made? When is there a telehealth visit being booked? And the way we do that is through, experimentation. Obviously, that sits on the shoulders of behavioral science, deep data analytics, and just, understanding consumer behavior at the end of the day.
And you've worked with some really big clients. I see a Bombas, huge company, global,
Yeah.
Calendly, who everybody loves. I never thought I needed it until I actually needed it. Yeah, one of those.
Right.
And also, foundations, very, very different clients. And the approach is the same with all of them or different.
I think that we always call it kind of like the spine of our strategy is the same, right? And the way what we focus on, our why of driving tangible growth, our what, which is really kind of driving the connected consumer experience, and then our
Right.
how through experimentation. The way though that we go to market and the way we partner that with them will be bespoke based on where they are, what needs to be true. So for instance, it's interesting because we have clients that are very focused obviously on kind of like their website and that part of the digital experience. But one of the big things that we've really uncovered, which was, I don't want to say a surprise, but it was a lot of people were having asymmetric consumer experiences going
Hmm.
from paid media to their website. So
Right.
the paid creative would have something in it, and then they would, consumer would click on it, they get to the landing page, and it would be something totally different.
Right.
And so that has actually been a big area where we have found when we are working with clients to quickly identify that, because just by improving, again, that digital experience, improving that first experience when they get to your own property on your landing page, that can have massive gains for them. That can have high probability of them actually making it through the funnel of driving that purchase, of driving those sales. And so it's interesting because I was with our Mattel clients in LA the other week, and some of the challenges that they're facing are very similar to ones that other clients, even in different industries, are facing. And
Mm.
that's one of the things I tell my clients. I'm like, you're not alone,
Yeah.
right? These are some of the challenges that people are facing that really become macro outside of different categories and different industries.
Yeah, and as digital marketing, I mean, it's matured so much in the last 20 years, but you see the last, 5 years, everyone complaining.
Yeah,
I put I put an ad out, it does really well, and all of a sudden I reach all these people, it's really great, but then I'm going to put another ad of similar type out, and now I don't reach as many people. It's costing
right.
me more, or it's costing me more money to
Yep.
do exactly the same thing. So that constant algorithm change has got to be extremely stressing and challenging for marketing clients for sure.
It totally is. And I think the other thing is um, that's challenging for marketing organizations is they're very siloed. So
Yeah.
as this landscape has become more fragmented as you meet
Yeah.
all these different specialists. And that's always my push of like, who is thinking about the single consumer experience?
Right. All the way
Because
across.
all the way across. Because if you don't have that, that's where things break down. And
Right.
that's where, you're kind of starting at the beginning multiple times throughout that journey versus really getting that 1+1 = 3 effect.
How is AI coming? I mean, it's such a big,
Yeah.
I mean, it's on every tip of everybody's tongue. It's in the stock market of everybody. I call it EIEIO because it's talked about so much. How do you utilize it in the business that you have and with your
Yeah.
clients?
Yeah, so we utilize it in a couple different ways. So I think one of the interesting things about Cro Metrics that when we started, Chris has a product and an engineering background,
Hmm.
and so he was a big believer in like we also have to have a product that is enabling this experimentation, and so that has really been a core of what we've been doing. And at the beginning of this year, we launched Impact Lens, and so because we've run over 30,000 tests across a number of the different swim lanes and across industries. We have some really great data.
Yeah.
And by creating Impact Lens, we were able to create actually a predictive model so
Hmm.
that we understand what is the probability of a win and what would be the financial impact of that win. And so that has actually, we just came out of beta a couple months ago. And it's great because we're seeing a win rate of our experiments moving from an industry average of a 20% up to 55%.
Wow.
And so what it actually does is it's been an incredible tool for our clients because again, if we're all trying to drive this
Yeah.
tangible growth,
Right.
that's an incredible way to do it. So I'd say kind of that's our biggest piece from a product standpoint. But what we've done, which I think is helped us quite a bit, operationally, is embedded it actually into our experimentation product. So we're having AI to help do the experimentation hypotheses and things like that, obviously using it in analytics. But we're also doing a lot of like even just vibe coding. So one
Yeah.
of the things that we built was a meeting prepper, right? So depending on
Hmm.
the level of the client that we're working with, it takes a long time to prep for a client meeting or a
Oh, yeah.
conversation. And we've been able to connect it to all of our different data and systems so that I can go in and, I'm not in the weeds of every business, but I'm saying, hey, I'm meeting with the CMO of, insert the name of the company. And it has, we've tuned it in and we continue to tune it in. But here are kind of the things that I like to know about. Here are the things that I want so that I'm not, manually going in and looking
Yeah.
at these things and it can actually just create that. So we have that tuned for the different levels so that that is not only saving time for our client, for our teams, but it's also helping to drive, tremendous value in those touch points that we have with our clients beyond just the day-to-day business.
I mean, I think the whole learning of it, it makes you smarter faster in
Yeah,
that way, right? You walk in and they feel like, oh, you speak my language and you understand me as a client in my industry. It's a big deal versus talking about yourself and what you can do. It's like, no, we actually know your pain points. Here's how we can help solve them. Very different conversation.
totally. And I think to your point of, you call AI, EIEIO, I call it like AI equals IA, which is it's an imagination accelerator. And so for me to be able to spend my time not thinking about, not going in and being like, okay, I'm getting all of the parts and the pieces, but really to say, okay, I have this base of information. What are those blue sky ideas that I have that I can bring to the table that can build on some of this stuff to create a really like, co-created conversation with that client about what's possible as they're thinking about where they're taking their business.
Yeah, like the hyper brainstorm almost, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, it
totally.
jump starts. It's a great way, great use of AI. You know, you're a CEO and a woman in a space that has been dominated by a lot of men and bias, and we won't go down that road. So take like drinks and other things.
Yeah.
What are some of the most powerful lessons you've learned about owning your voice, building credibility, and helping other women, kind of paying it forward?
Yeah. I mean, it goes actually one of your first questions, which is you have to get outside of your comfort zone. I think we as women are very just humble creatures by nature, right? We don't want to brag. We don't want to put ourselves out there. We don't want to come off as kind of show offy. And I've had to do a lot of self-motivation on myself
Yeah.
to say, post on LinkedIn, make videos that I share with my organization, be prepared, but be able to say that provocative thing or make that bigger change. And so I think it is about, self-motivation. I think it's also having a group of women that are kind of there and support your back. One of my best
Yeah.
friends, my neighbor, she's on the strategy team at the Mayo Clinic. And it is such a gift because we can share these things, we can talk about these things. We go to the Exec Club of Chicago events together, and you kind of have a partner in crime and you don't feel like you're in it yourself.
Right.
But I do think there's also an element for women where I say like one of our other superpowers is that we're really just hard workers, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
we do what my mom would say growing up of do a complete job. That was her
Mm-hmm.
advice when I had to do dishes. And she said, don't just do it to get it done. Do a complete job, get it all done. And I think that is one of those things. Like we are just a very we're a gender that takes a lot of pride in our work, that does go above and beyond to make sure it's done to a very high standard. And I always say to people, don't lose that because right, sometimes you see some guys that you're like, oh my gosh, they're doing a half-assed job and
Yeah.
they're still getting credit and getting ahead. And so I know people have said, oh, should I just do less and take more credit? And it's like, no, don't
No.
compromise your standard.
Yeah.
Lean into that. That's your reputation. That's what you're known for. But feel free to put yourself out there a little bit more and share what you did and why it was important and why it mattered. And even by you just saying that, you're actually showcasing to the next generation that like this is important and this is a part of being a leader is getting your voice out there and being heard.
Oh, great. Thank you so much. How do people get a hold of you? Let's give you a plug.
Yeah. So you can follow me on LinkedIn, Gwen-Hammes. And also you can find us on our website. It's crometrics.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me. Great to have a conversation with you today.